Hey everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode number 125 of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. I'm your coach, Angela Pugh. Thank you for spending some time with me today listening to the pod. Hopefully you're staying safe and surviving the craziness of 2020. It is really crazy to think that we are still dealing with all of this. I was talking to my mom the other day about COVID and saying, I remember in March when they first started talking about shutting down sporting events and concerts. And I remember thinking, there's no way they're not going to cancel March Madness. But they sure did, my friends. And they've continued to cancel the rest of the year. It's so crazy to sit here at the end of August looking at the rest of the year, with so much uncertainty and having no idea what is going to happen and when things will start to feel normal again. I'm just going to focus on staying safe and still being very limited as to where I go and what I do. And I'm definitely not touching my face. And that is my survival guide right there. That is my plan. Today's episode is awesome. We are going to get into a topic that no one really talks about too much. You hear about sex addiction and porn addiction, and most of us with addiction issues recognize we have relationship struggles. We don't necessarily pick the best partners or build the healthiest relationships, but we don't recognize that this can be its own compulsion. Even when you can see some codependence or insecurity, or maybe you see in yourself how you manipulate others for sex or attention or affection, it's still not a common understanding that this is a part of the same issue of addiction or compulsion. We're going to talk about sex and love addiction and really get into some of our unhealthy behaviors and what it's all about. And I love our guest today. She is amazing and funny. And she and I connecting was this really crazy situation. And I tell that story at the very beginning of our recording too. It's crazy how the world works and how things come to you sometimes. You know what I mean? So you'll hear that also. Really quickly, before we dive in, I need to make an apology for something that happened last week that I got some negative feedback for. I got a few angry emails and one negative iTunes review. And I guess it's bound to happen sometimes, but it does sting a bit, and I want to address it just the best way that I can. You may remember a while back, I did a whole episode about being teachable. Are you teachable? And the two most powerful things you can do in recovery is be teachable. Really in life, you have to be teachable as you go through this journey of life. And being teachable means you have to have two skills. You have to be able to listen, and you have to be willing to follow some guidance. And in this situation, I had to be able to listen. And I'm a believer that when I get feedback, I have to look at it objectively. What I don't want to do and don't want you to do is get caught up in the feelings that come with feedback and react to the feelings. So first of all, feelings are their own feedback. When you get to where you can look at your feelings as a tool to guide you, to show you where you need some work, then feelings aren't so scary and overwhelming, and we don't need to run away from them and numb them with alcohol, right? You use them as feedback. So here's what happened. An email went out last week, Wednesday morning of last week, and some people thought it was an email personally directed at them. And a few people were pissed. The whole truth of the situation is we, meaning my team and I, we have been in an open enrollment period for my 6-week Recovery 2K program. You've heard me mention it on the last few episodes. And again, I will tell you, if you're thinking about doing this program, you will want to do it this year. Do not wait. We'll probably do one more enrollment before the holidays to make sure people have good support going into the holidays. But next year, there will be changes. Anyway, this is a whole process, right? There's a sequence of emails that go out to remind you what the opportunities are, to schedule consultation calls, etc. And you may have noticed you were getting these emails, and it probably felt like a lot of emails because usually I don't send a ton of emails because I don't want to drive you crazy. So I'm usually a 1 email a week kind of guy. But when we're in an open enrollment, it's limited time, right? So I want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to get in. So there are more emails. This sequence of emails goes out to everyone. I do not pick and choose a few people to email. They go out to everyone, so everyone has the same opportunity. And this one particular email last week really made a few people mad. And for that, I do want to apologize. It was not personal or directed at anyone. This was a sequence that was written and scheduled weeks ago. And when I went back and read the email to see how I made people mad, I could definitely see that it came off a little aggressive and sounded more harsh than I intended it to. And I immediately sent apology emails to each of the people that were upset. It never feels good to have people angry at you. And I get mean messages sometimes, right? It's all a part of putting yourself out there, being a public person. And I have to be okay with the fact that some people are not going to like me. And they're not going to like my thoughts and opinions or my approach. And I am okay with that. What really made me sad is that people thought I was attacking them personally. And I would not do that. I am direct, I am honest with my thoughts and opinions, and I can certainly probably be a bit abrasive. The negative review someone left me said that I'm condescending and some other stuff, and I know there's some truth to that. So when someone gives me feedback of any sort, I have to look at it honestly. And I know one of my character defects, that's what we call them in 12-step programs, character defects. One of my character defects is that I can be condescending. You guys have heard me talk about this on a million episodes, that I don't, when I get angry or whatever, I don't scream and yell, but I can get very mean with my words. It is never my intention to be condescending in my podcast or certainly in my email communication with you. And that's what I want to apologize for. I am not a blame and shame person. For me, I don't even like to get caught up in that. I don't want anyone to feel bad. I want us to be in a place that we can be very honest about ourselves, our situation, our efforts, and who we are. And that's where I can get a little tough sometimes, but it is never to blame or shame because I don't even believe in that. I don't believe in blaming people, places, or things for my life or my issues. I don't even believe in blame. We all play a role in everything that happens in our lives. We all play an active role in creating our reality. It's not anybody's fault, right? It's just a series of choices. I have always been honest with you guys that I can be a real jerk sometimes. Just because I've been sober a long time and I've built a nice recovery life doesn't mean I don't still struggle with all the same things you struggle with. And I just wanted to be really honest about that, right? So I got some negative words. I took it in for a minute and I have to look at what pieces of that have some truth, right? Because that is a guide for me to tell me what I need to work on. and I will always make amends. I do not mind being wrong. I do not mind being corrected. I want to be objective about who I am and the effect that I'm having and how I am perceived to other people, right? Because that is my responsibility. So I just wanted to make that apology. That email was not intended to be attacking. It was not personal to anyone. And you guys know, if you get an email from me, you'll know it's from me. I will tell you it's me. And I do email people. If you email me something, a lot of times I will email you back. And, sometimes I'm really busy too, and I can't get to every email, but I do email a lot of people back. But you'll know it's from me. I will tell you it's me. It's not going to be a form email, right? That is a sequence that goes out to thousands of people. So I just wanted to own my part in that because I probably was a little careless. I was not intending to be mean or harsh, but I probably was just going a little fast and didn't recognize how the email sounded. And for all of you in the Facebook group that really gave me some great, kind words that day. And I so appreciate that, you guys, because I was pretty upset. Like, I don't ever like to hurt people's feelings. And I work really hard to not be that person because that's who I used to be for sure. And I do put a lot of energy into not being that person anymore. But everybody in the Facebook group was so kind. And what I really loved too, when I apologized in the Facebook group, is that you guys stepped up and because one of the things I thought was, I don't hide who I am. I don't hide my approach. I don't hide my directness. I'm very direct in all of my podcasts. You guys know exactly where I stand and what I think about things. And I'm not direct because I want to be mean. I'm direct because I want us to be honest about where we are, who we are, and the efforts we're putting in, because that's where we fool ourselves. Right. So that's part of my thought process too. It's like, well, I don't hide that I'm a little tough, but that's usually what people really like about me, because I am a little tough, but I'm also very soft and kind. I'm a combination of all of those things. And I don't ever want anyone to feel attacked by me. And that is the absolute truth. I will never be attacking. Typically, even when I am attacked, I can kind of retreat and just remove myself from a situation and not be reactive to my feelings. Because feelings are just not reliable, right? I don't want to make decisions in my life based on my feelings because feelings change too quickly. I want to use my feelings as feedback. If I'm feeling angry, I have to look at what's under that anger, right? Am I fearful of something? So I can fix the actual issue. But the feelings are there just to guide us in where we need to do a little bit of work, right? To feel better. So that is that thing. Now, let's dive into this episode with Brianne Davis, who is absolutely fantastic. And we're going to talk about sex and love and relationships and all the ways we do it wrong, but also some great healing. And this is a fantastic conversation. I think you guys are going to love it. Here's Brianne Davis.
Okay, first, Brianne, I have to say, I'm so excited to have you on the show. I'm so excited to meet you. And I have to tell this little story that you and I were just talking about before we started recording. So for those of you out there, I think you're all pretty familiar that I am a binge TV watcher, and especially as an entrepreneur, and so much of my work, when you have a digital company, everything is on the computer, right? So I'm just at home glued to my computer all the time, and I always have TV going. I always have shows on or documentaries or news. And I had come across this show that was fantastic, and I binged the whole thing, 2 seasons. And at first, I thought the show was new because I hadn't heard of it before. So I was like, oh my gosh, when is the next season? The show's fantastic. And only to find out the show is actually a few years old and there were no more seasons, and I was heartbroken. Next thing I know, maybe 5 days later, I get this email from this beautiful person about collaborating, doing a podcast, going on her podcast, and I Google her, of course, and you are from the show.
Yeah.
Like, it was so crazy. The show was called Six. It was so much fun. I mean, it's exactly my kind of show, like high action, all of that is exactly what I love. So it was really great for me. But how excited was I that 5 days later you were coming out of the television and entering my real life? So from there, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do.
Oh my God, that is the best story ever. I feel like we're connected all by energy. And I'm Brianne Davis, by the way. But it's such a God shot, such a well, how does that happen out of all the people in the world to get an email 5 days later? That to me is just crazy. But yeah, my name's Brianne. I've been around in the Hollywood world for probably 20 years. I'm one of those actors you've seen, but you don't know her name. I always say that, I get those people that look at me and they're like, I've seen you before. I don't know what it's from. Yeah, I've been pretty much on every show you can imagine and movie. You just wouldn't know me. I'm just a working actor. But yeah, I just started this new podcast called Secret Life Podcast because in March, right before the quarantine hit, I released this article in HuffPost. It's called I Am a Sex and Love Addict, and This Is How I Knew. And I decided to put myself out there at my 10 years of sobriety, and I thought the world was going to stop and everyone was going to applaud me, and nothing happened. So it really reminded me how small we are in this world. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, Secret Life Podcast. I hear other people's secrets. I connect to other people during this tumultuous time that we're going through. And it's been such a blessing. And that is what made me reach out to you, to another female podcaster talking about recovery, talking about making themselves better as a person. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
I love that. So I have to tell you too, I was super excited when I Googled you. I was super excited to see that you were about sex and love addiction because especially the love addiction part, because I feel like certainly in the last several years, sex addiction is getting more attention. It's definitely becoming more prominent in conversation, which is so freaking necessary.
So necessary.
And at the same time, I think that for women, a lot of women, it does tend to fall more on the love addiction side and just those negative habits, but you don't know that. Certainly when you're in the midst of it, when you're just having bad relationship after bad relationship, you know what I mean? You don't understand that it really is a negative and damaging pattern that you're repeating over and over again. And I didn't realize it until many, many years into my sobriety. I was probably 7, 8, 9 years maybe before it dawned on me like, oh, wow, this is what I've been doing.
This is who I'm picking. Why do I keep picking this kind of person or this unavailable person?
Yeah, but it's also
drama.
Challenging. I think it's challenging to understand in the beginning too, that because I am a person with addiction, that doesn't just mean substance, right? I'm equally compulsive and can be unhealthy with any behavior, with people, with shopping, with food, right? I'm just compulsive.
Yeah, it's called the whack-a-mole. You know, you hit the alcohol or drugs and it goes to a different people, places, and things. Yes. Exactly. I'm like, I need to buy all those dresses so it makes me feel better. And you get them and you get that high for 2 minutes and then nothing. You feel nothing.
Well, that's what I did with relationships. I'm telling you, most of my adult life, that's what I did with relationships, is I used it for that sort of high. And I think you and I talked about this in email a little bit back and forth about me coming on your podcast and what would be the secret. And I think that's what I was alluding to would be kind of the thing, that it was even a secret to me.
Yeah. That's what I say. A lot of people tell me they don't have any secrets. And I'm like, you have secrets. Everybody has secrets, even subconscious ones you don't even know you have.
Yes. Yes. So I want to talk about your secrets
Ooh.
and your recovery journey. Like, How old were you when you first really knew that you had a problem?
Okay, well, I need to go back a little earlier than that. The moment I first got high from love. So I like to always start kind of my story is I grew up with this impression that love looked like the movies or the television show. It's always happy, fairy, lucky, and then it had to be passionate. It had to be drama and high intensity. I grew up watching Romeo and Juliet. So for me, love meant one person has to be dying, stabbing themselves, or drinking poison for it to really mean true love. You know what I mean?
Well, that's bonding.
Yeah, it's like we are in this. We love each other so much. We would die for each other.
Yes.
And that's what I think society pushes about love. Like it has to be that. And first of all, you should not die for anybody. Nobody should die for anybody. And I have to tell you, I've spoken at a lot of jails, a lot of female jails, and gone in, and almost every woman in the jail is in there for sex and love addiction. That they stole something for a man, they murdered somebody else that was with their man, they murdered their husband. So I just have to say, like, this is more deadly than drugs and alcohol. And people don't see that. So growing up, I had this unrealistic expectations of what relationships look like. And the moment I cheated, because I was a cheater, the moment I cheated on my boyfriend in 8th grade in the closet with his friend kissed me. I'm not kidding you. It was like my entire body was on fire. Because I was in the closet with this other boy, young. I didn't know what I was doing. And it was this rush, this power I had over him that he wanted to hurt his friend. And I was so worth ruining that relationship for. And then I had this secret that nobody knew about it. And it was kind of dirty. So that is like set me on the track for the rest of my adulthood until I walked into the program at 28 years old. But when I knew it was a really big problem, I stopped and said, am I going to be doing this the rest of my life? Am I going to be in a relationship and then always be looking outside, flirting, intriguing, using other people to make me feel better as a person? I looked at the man I was with, my boyfriend that I lived with, and 2 days before that, I went on set and found out that my mentor died. So I was on set, and I remember I started intriguing with somebody that I didn't even like as a person. Like you go hang out with people and they're rude to waiters and you're like, I don't even like you as a person, but for some reason I'm like attracted to you. What's wrong with me? And I had this guy at home that I loved, that I trusted, that was my best friend, and I wanted to blow it up. And I kind of had an out-of-body experience going, am I going to be doing this the rest of my life? Am I going to be blowing up really good relationships for this high with someone I don't even like as a person? So that was like an eye-opening experience for me.
Will you explain to the listeners intriguing?
Okay, intriguing is when you have an energy exchange where you're using that person to kind of fill you. Like you're intriguing with them, acting like you like them, but really it's just a game. Like you were never planning on doing it. It's a little more intense than flirting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I just know the majority of my listeners aren't going to know.
No, I didn't either. I'd be like,
yeah.
And I was like, what's wrong with flirting? That's like the best part of life is to flirt. Like, what do you mean I can't flirt? It's actually not a good thing. There's no real connection. It's like air.
Now, intriguing, and I love this term, and I think that it's so relatable also to so many people because certainly people with addiction, we do this a lot as we, like I said, misuse many things in life.
Many things.
Now, can this also be a part of the manipulation, like to again, like I always say, I feel like so often I used relationships just for that high, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm only interested in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm in love with falling in love. That's what I say.
Yes, that part is
Exactly.
awesome. But when it starts to get really serious, I lose interest very quickly because
Yeah,
it's
I
not
mean, who
fun.
wants to pay the bills and pick up the dog poop and do all that stuff? That's not fun. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, when it gets too heavy, it's like, I don't know. I think
You're a real
by
person with
myself.
flaws? No, thank you.
So there is this sort of manipulation that takes place though, right? Like as I would be acting out with another person, like you said, like, listen, how many times can I say that like I was flirting with someone or on a date with someone who I really genuinely didn't like?
Yeah.
But it was fulfilling a something, right? Like whether it was boredom or companionship or attention or whatever, it was filling something.
Mhm.
So at what point does that get dangerous and really manipulative? At what point do you recognize like, oh, really, I'm just using this person for sex, or really I'm just using this person for the companionship and I'm not really interested in them or their feelings or anything?
I mean, it gets dangerous when you finally realize it, I have to say, because when you're
Right.
subconsciously not aware of using people to fill the emptiness or boredom or, self-love, that you always have to have attention from somebody outside of yourself. That's dangerous. That is a dangerous combination because no one ever is going to be enough to fill you.
Right.
And I tell people that are with sex and love addicts, I do a lot of sober coaching with women that are sex and love addicts, are talking to their partners. And I have to explain to them that you could be the most perfect individual. And if you're with a sex and love addict, it's never going to be enough. So that's the dangerous part. You're always looking outside of yourself. You're always intriguing, getting people in your web, using this person for attention or to go to dinner and then calling some other guy to make you feel better, or having, phone sex with another guy, or DMing these random dudes on Instagram. Like that is a dangerous place to live because you're always going to be empty at the end.
I hadn't even really thought about it until you were just saying that too. But now there's like all these mediums to connect with people with social media. Like there's all these ways to connect with people that certainly I didn't have when I was younger.
No, and thank God. Could you imagine? I would probably be dead if
Right.
that was 20 years ago available Instagram. And it's this false sense of intimacy that society right now is leaning on. I mean, I'm just going to tell a story about one of my dear friends that was almost 9 years sober in AA. And I've been trying to get her into my program, Sex and Love, and she's refusing. And here's the horrible thing, she was DMing all these guys all over the country, getting involved with them. And she lost her sobriety over it. Like she started drinking, she started using drugs because her main core addiction, the abandonment, the fear of being alone, the fear of not enough, not having enough self-love, all came up because these guys were like leading her on Instagram. And I'm like,
Right.
That's how bad it is. You can lose your sobriety in AA over this addiction. And I have to say one more thing that's really important to me is that the first year of my sobriety, the withdrawal was brutal, absolutely brutal. I'm talking crying every day for 9 months. And I remember walking into a meeting and this guy came in, he was new, and he said, I could quit heroin, but I cannot quit her. Do not ask me to leave her. And that to me was a God shot saying like, this is how serious this disease is.
Mm-hmm. And in tandem with alcohol or drugs, right? It's so, those behaviors are so significant because it will drag you back to your substance also, right? Because you can't participate in the behaviors and do the things, especially once you recognize it's problematic.
Oh yeah.
And you're not doing it right. You can't continue to do that and feel good about yourself. And if you don't feel good about yourself, you can be heading to a bad place and that can go back to a relapse for sure.
For sure. I mean, I talked to a sober coach the other day that runs a sobriety place, recovery place, and he said the one thing that is breaking people's sobriety is relationships.
Absolutely.
That is what makes people relapse.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's been a saying like in AA forever, right? It's what do people relapse over? Finances and romances. Those are the two biggest issues, finances and romances. And it's so true, because those are the things too, really, that will knock you the farthest off center very quickly in a very powerful way. I love that you said too, the false sense of intimacy, like in messaging people. And I'm a person, for my career for many years, more than a decade, I have traveled consistently, almost all the time. And either speaking engagements or doing interventions or whatever it is, I travel a lot. So I have always been very open to long distance relationships, because it doesn't matter where my actual home base is. Everything for me is kind of a long distance relationship because I travel so much, So it's just fascinating to me, because it's the same thing in that long distance. And that's the dynamic that it reminded me of when you said that's this false sense of intimacy. And I used to think that it was really cool, because when somebody isn't in your same city, it's like you have these built-in boundaries, right? That you can't cross. And it's so nice, certainly as a female with trauma and abandonment and all of that stuff. It's so nice to be in a position with a guy where you really have to talk and get to know each other, where it doesn't just become sexual right off the bat. And it's one of the things that I dislike the most about dating is I feel like I'm always, in the first date or two, it's like I'm always on eggshells waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, okay, when is he going to grab me? Like, when am I going to have to start? No, I don't want to do that. So let's take this slow. When do I have to start this song and dance, And when you have that distance or somebody online, you don't have any of those issues, right? You really are just talking to the person and getting to know one another. At the same time,
dun dun dun.
That is a very false sense of closeness, because too, I think it takes at least, and I have a lot of experience in this, I think it takes at least twice as long to actually get to know someone when you're not in the same place, right? Because really, and I had a situation several years ago, somebody that I met on Instagram and start messaging, right? And and here's what I learned. He could have told me anything. Of course, I found out that everything he said was a lie.
Of course.
Because he just made up this whole persona, but I'm not where he is, so I can't verify any of that. I don't know if it's true or not. And I am a very honest person, so I can be a little naive when it comes to these things. I don't just assume everybody's lying, because I don't lie about myself and who I am, So same thing, that false sense of intimacy is like, wow, this is really great, really getting to know somebody. And then it just blows up. And it was crazy.
Yeah, no. And that's what I tell people. They're like, I know him. I talk to him. And I'm like, talking over the phone is not, even on FaceTime, you are not with the person. You do not see their quirks. You do not see their behaviors. You do not see the every day-to-day of their existence. They can really be whoever they want to be.
Yeah.
So all these women that I've been talking to keep saying no. And I'm like, you do really not know this person, even if you've been talking for a year.
Yeah. I just had this conversation with my girlfriend the other day, and she was going on a first date, and they had talked and everything on the phone, they met on an app, and they had been talking and texting, and she really liked him and she was super excited. And I was like, dude, you got to bring it down, because you haven't been in this person's energy yet.
Yeah.
And a lot of things can change in that instant when you get in somebody's energy. And it's just a different ball game.
It's a whole different ballgame. And also, like, you come in with all these expectations that the other person probably cannot live up to because you've actually been having the relationship in your head. There's a sense of fantasy when you are DMing someone or calling on the phone with them or texting. I think texting should be outlawed in dating. It
I
is the
agree.
worst form of communication. Even
Yeah.
with friends, you should not text girlfriends. Like, I'll be there in 5 minutes, maybe, but
Right.
all conversations should be taken off any form of texting, social media, or anything. That's what I
Yeah.
believe.
And here, this was a big breakthrough for me because I realized this fantasy that you're talking about. I realized that, I would go out with somebody a couple of times and they would be nice. Of course, you're always on your best behavior in the
Of
beginning.
course.
And, we don't show each other our crazy in the beginning. So I would go out with somebody like a few times and they would be nice and they would treat the server well and tip well. And all of those things would be in place. And I literally would create this whole person from just these few traits. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, he's kind and generous. And like, I would create this whole persona. And I realized I was probably, I don't know, maybe 5 years sober when that one hit me. And I always say I have a whole separate, like I had my alcohol rock bottom. And then when I was 4 years sober, I had my relationship rock bottom.
Yeah. A lot of people in AA do. We have a lot of old timers come in with 20 years, 30 years. They're struggling in this area because
Right.
underneath that substance, underneath that drugs, alcohol, eating, usually is that core sense of not enough,
Right.
abandonment,
Right.
fear, all that sits underneath there. They say AA is the last house on the block.
Yeah.
And they say slaw's the actual shack in the back that no one ever wants to go to. Like you do not want to walk in that room.
Yeah. And SLAA, for listeners, that's SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts
Yes.
Anonymous. I have to explain the lingo.
But here's the beautiful thing. When I started 11 years ago, there was maybe 40 people, a couple meetings a day in LA, which, is one of the big 12-step communities in the world. But now, more younger and younger people are coming in, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. Our meetings are like 80 plus people. There's 1,300 meetings in the US a week. They're in Bali. They're all over the world because this is now, society is having a problem connecting.
Yeah.
We have all these ways to connect, but it's actually disconnecting us.
Yeah.
And it's just really coming to a head, especially with, the porn making intimacy more difficult, especially for young men. All that is coming to a head where people are having a really hard time connecting on a human level. And that's why I use my voice. They always talk about men being sex addicts. They never talk about, women being sex and love addicts. Really, no woman wants to admit, hey, I'm a sex and love addict. I was never going to admit it. I was going to go to my grave. Just the people around me know. But there was something bigger than me. Like, I have to give this a voice because I see so many other people struggling, blowing up their marriages, picking unavailable men. And it became really important to me. And that's why I started the podcast. That's why I'm writing a book that's coming out at the end of the year called Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict. So this is really important to me that people understand they're not alone and there's a place to go. And there's, get into therapy if you're struggling. Why do you keep picking this type of person? Yeah. All that stuff is really, I just went on a tangent. I hope I didn't bore you guys, but that was like, I had to say that. It's really important that we as humans learn to actually connect with each other.
Yeah. And again, I have to say, especially for women, because the sexual revolution in itself is so different for women now, right? But I feel like we are just getting to a place that it's even okay for us to talk about some of these things.
Yeah.
And the way the world has been structured up to this point, and even
not so great.
Yeah, right. In relationships and, fighting some of those traditional stereotypes. And certainly when I was young, when I started dating, it was still very male dominant. The female was expected to be more submissive and do as she's told and not be outspoken and all of those things, right? So to be in a place like where we are today, where it is actually okay as a woman to talk about your sexuality and struggles that you're having and ways that you're misusing it. Because I think for certainly my age group, for sure, I'm probably at least 10 years older than you. So we might be a little bit different in that, but it almost, the way relationships were in that male dominant role almost created a lot of the issues that we struggle with as we get older, right? So a lot of things that dawn on me as I get healthier and as I'm sober longer, right, and really doing good, intense work on myself, you just start to learn all these different layers of what's going on with you and why you're the way you are and all that stuff. And I just think it's so beautiful that we can actually speak about it, and we can connect over it. And it's so infinitely important that women have that outlet and that opportunity. So I appreciate you so much for being vocal about it. It's so important.
Yeah. And what I love about this new movement is now women are starting to honor each other, to respect each other. I feel like for the longest time, women were in competition over a man. And it's like, no, we don't need to be in competition with each other. We need to support each other. We need to uplift. That's what's most important to me, especially this movement, this, the Me Too movement in Hollywood with dealing with these men that have always had the power. And it's like, no, we don't have to put up with that anymore as women. And we can stand together and we can stand and say, this is my sexuality. This is what I want in a man. And this is who I am. And if you don't want to be a part of that, that's okay. Bye-bye. And that's what I love about this new generation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was watching, I don't even remember what show. It was a medical show, maybe last year. And there was this exchange with a female doctor and a male doctor, and he was really inappropriate with her, right? And she's talking to her boyfriend later about whether or not she should report the doctor because he was much higher up than her, much more powerful and respected. And she's like, should I even go to whoever, management or whoever, and even report this? And her boyfriend asked her, are you sure that's what he meant? And it was such an enlightening moment for me too, right? So the whole episode is about her going back and forth. Do I report this? Do I not? And she said to her boyfriend at the end, she's like, you are the person that loves me the most in the world. And you are the person that I trust. And even you questioned me. And that's what makes it so difficult to come forward. And it was such a beautiful moment because I'm like, oh my gosh, because that's exactly what happens. People question you like, are you sure that's what, are you sure that's what they meant? Maybe you took it the wrong way. And it's like, no, dude, I'm telling
you were inappropriate.
Yes, I know what is inappropriate. I'm not crazy.
Well, here's the thing. 1 out of every 3 girls is going to be sexually harassed in her lifetime.
I would have thought it was higher than that.
Probably more, but honestly, it's like that happens on such a daily basis, and we are looked as sexual objects. So we start to devalue ourselves, especially like we said with social media, putting sex out there, sex sells. And it's like, yes, it's the feminist movement. Like we are in charge of our bodies, but I don't think anybody really wants their TNA hanging out all the time and them to only be loved and liked for those things. I think we're more than that. And I think it's stepping into our truth, stepping into, I have not had a healthy relationship modeled for me. I don't know how to do a healthy relationship. I haven't seen one. So here are some new tools to set boundaries, to say no and mean no, to love yourself and not let anybody use you or lie to you. Or I can't tell you how many women I talked to and interviewed on my podcast that were the mistresses. They were the ones accepting the crumbs. You do not need to accept crumbs to be loved from any relationship, a friendship even. I mean, I have to tell you, this work, this, looking at my sex and love addiction has really taken any drama out of my life. I do not have any friends that create drama. I don't have any friends that don't show up for me. I actually don't have anybody in my life like that anymore. And I used to surround myself with people that didn't show up for me.
Yeah.
And I just was sick and tired of being sick and tired of not being honored for the amazing person that I am, but also not in an ego sense. Like, oh, I'm this amazing person. It's like, no, I'm amazing just for being alive and breathing on the planet today. And that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. This is huge too. I think, you know, being more, I always say when I think back on my 20s, I wish I would have protected myself more. I
Yeah.
wish I would have been more connected, even with my body and with myself as a person, right? Because this was a huge piece of my growth too. You know, when I was a bartender all over Hollywood and Beverly Hills my whole 20s, right? I had that life and at the Hollywood parties and doing all of that stuff. And it was incredible. But I spent the majority of my adulthood like mostly naked, you know, and I don't even mean in a sexual sense, but I mean, like I was always in the skimpiest dresses and the highest heels. And, you know, that was just my life. And I think about it now and it's like, well, Angela, of course you weren't attracting the most healthy people because I was leading with my body. So
your sexuality,
my sexuality. So of course I was attracting people that's what they were attracted to. And it's so fascinating. You know, I always say in recovery, like I really have had the opportunity to be two entirely different human beings in one lifetime, you know, because I was the first half of my life, I was a mess and insecure and irresponsible. And I was a bartender and I was just surrounded by really unhealthy people all the time. And now I've gotten to grow into the person that's like who I always wanted to be. And, you know, CEO and successful businesses, and I'm powerful and I'm strong and I'm happy and I'm confident and I love myself. Yeah. And I never had that experience before. And now sitting in this place, of course, hindsight's always 2020. I can look back and see all those little tiny things I did that were so damaging that I just had no idea. I just had no idea. You know, I wish I would have been a little more conservative and covered myself a little more and all of those things, you know, it's just fascinating. I also thought I was an extrovert though. And I wasn't an extrovert. I was just drunk.
So, I was just drunk on alcohol.
So that's been quite a shift also to realize that I'm really a super nerd. But when I was drunk, I thought I was an extrovert. So,
well, something you said was so fascinating because you said you've been these two people in your life. And I think that's the beautiful thing about sobriety is a part of you actually dies when you get sober from drugs, alcohol, eating, gambling, you know, sex or love or whatever. A part of you has to die and you have to jump into the unknown and trust that on the other side, it's a whole new person. And that's what I love. Like the person I am today is not the person I was 11 years ago.
Yes.
And to live in this new reality, and you think it's going to be boring, and you think, oh, I can't drink anymore. I'm going to boring life. I can't flirt. I can't intrigue. I can't have sex with whoever I want. All those things you think, ugh, how boring. But it is so freeing. Yeah. Like to not be controlled by any other person. And I have to say, I'm married today, but I'm with the same man I was 15 years ago. So it's not like I got sober in sex and love addiction and I found the most perfect individual. Like that's not how it happened. I have a kid today. I never wanted a kid. I was too selfish and self-seeking. I didn't have time to take care of a little individual. And it's like, I honestly, if my husband left me today, I would be okay. Because I love myself enough. And I have this thing written on my computer, to love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. Yeah. We're born with ourselves and we die with ourselves. Nobody else goes with us. So we might as well like ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say, ultimately, I have to wake up with me every day the rest of my life. It is incredibly important that I like myself and I respect the decisions that I make, you know? Yeah. And what an incredible transition too. to be whole and not need validation from other people, right? I don't need someone else to make me feel better. In fact, sometimes I wish I did need a little of that, because I can be really hard on myself, and I wish it was so simple as an outside person going, "Oh no, you're fantastic." And like that would change everything. But it doesn't work that way. It really
Doesn't
is
work that way.
internal. It is an internal thing. And you're right. It is so freeing, and it frees up so much space and energy and mind space, like to just not have, I just don't have anything to hide from. I don't have any secrets. I don't have any vices left, really. I mean, I just get to be me, and I get to enjoy my life. And people always say, like, what do you do when you're sober? Like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I do everything that I spent the first half of my life just talking about, and I was too drunk to get off the bar stool and go do anything. Now I do all that stuff, now it's like I travel. I'm a scuba diver. I travel all over the world and dive, and I get to do whatever I want.
Yeah. And you don't wake up with a hangover or shame and regret where you're like, ooh, who was I with last night? Ooh, what did I do? Ooh, I texted my ex that I really don't like because I just wanted him to give me attention. Like you do not have any of those things in your life which drag you down and bring you shame. And I also have to say what's really important, a lot of people look at like Hollywood and like, you're an actress and all that stuff. Like that is the worst environment for a sex and love addict to be in. And I love that sometimes I come into a meeting and you'll see somebody that makes $1 million an episode on a sitcom or a show, and they have everything and they're so empty. And that's what I always try to look at is like, you could have everything in the world and be so empty. And I don't want to live my life like that anymore. That's why I walked into the rooms. That's why I surrendered. I stayed off Instagram. I stayed off social media for a very long time because it can be very toxic with like the likes and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think if you're struggling out there and you're in a bad relationship or in a relationship that has a lot of drama, to me, that's a clear sign that something isn't connecting in your life. And maybe it's something you should look at.
Yeah. When I said, I was 4 years sober and I had my relationship rock bottom, I literally, just because you get sober as a drunk, especially just because you put the drink down doesn't mean that all of those years of bad habits magically disappear. Right. So when I got sober, I still was picking the exact same type of guys that I picked when I was drunk, right? It was the same guy that I would pick, and it was a personality. And of course they were drunk because I had been drunk for so many years. Like that was my guy. And I found myself at 4 years sober, literally dating one of the worst people I ever picked. I mean, he was horrible. He was an alcoholic. He was a drug addict. He was incredibly successful and wealthy and had this picture of a life on the outside, but he was a hot mess. And then I found out that he had a girlfriend who lived with him. And I was like, lives with, like, one of my friends called me and said, oh, he just showed up at this bar with his live-in girlfriend. I was like, what are you talking about? Because I've been to his house. Like there's no girl living there. And come to find out, he was a real estate developer and he had multiple condos, right? So I had just been to one of them. She lived with him in another one. And it was that rock bottom moment, right? Where I was like, Angela, like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
How are you sober? And like, you've turned your life around and you're becoming this whole different human, but you're still dating these people. Like it's time to start digging into that and figuring that out. And what I did, I made a list of all the things that I wanted in my dream guy, right? Like all the qualities, like, of course I want him to be nice and kind and, just all those kind of cheesy things, but also my guy has to be driven because I'm very driven and they have to understand that dynamic in me. And so I made this list of everything I wanted. And when I went back and read the list, I realized I was not any of those things myself. And I was like, well, how can I expect a guy to bring this to the table? And I'm not bringing this to the table. That doesn't seem fair. And my whole focus shifted from guys and attention and using dating for that high all of that shifted to me really just getting myself together and figuring myself out. And that's when I started digging into that work and really starting to understand self-esteem and self-confidence and how to rebuild those things. And I mean, it was a heck of a journey.
It's tough. It's so tough. It's brutal. It's a brutal journey to sit there and look at yourself and look at the type of people you're picking and looking at your behaviors and how you set bottom lines, with your partner or people you're dating, boundaries, all that. It's really difficult, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it because you deserve to be loved. You deserve connection. You deserve a healthy relationship,
Yeah, but I have to be able to do those things also
for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Well, in a relationship too, like I have to be that person for someone else. And I think that was a big struggle for me also, was understanding that I couldn't be that person. I couldn't be a dependable partner for somebody, right? Like, and I was not a cheater. I think my trauma just made me a little bit different in that regard. I was never a cheater. I wasn't super promiscuous, even in my drinking. That just wasn't a part of my story, again, because I think my trauma just made me go the other way, but I could not show up and be present with a partner and be a good partner in a lot of ways, especially when it came to intimacy, because I was so broken. So it wasn't only learning to pick a person who was more appropriate for me, but it was learning that I had to be that person too. I can't ask somebody to trust me if I'm not trustworthy.
Exactly.
I can't be in a relationship with someone and say, yes, I'm going to be here for you and we're going to build a life together if I know there's a good chance I'm going to bail.
See ya. Gets hard. I'm out.
Right. So, I mean, I had to figure all that stuff out. And it's hard work. It's good work, but it's hard work.
Yeah. I mean, intimacy and relationships are the hardest things, is connecting those two. They say it's into me you see. Like, you have to open up, you have to be authentic, you have to show up for others like you want to show up for yourself. That's why I live by the principles, to love every one of my character defects. I try to do the opposite. And those are the type of people you start to, connect with that also are like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been an incredible journey, a really good piece of rebuilding myself. It really has. And I think sometimes people can get in a little bit of a hurry to dig into those things too. And like I said, I didn't start doing that work until I was about 4 years sober, and it was hard work. And I needed to be sober that long to be stable enough and comfortable enough to really dig into some of those things.
Oh yeah, it takes time. I mean, I didn't get married to my husband until we were together for 10 years.
Yeah.
We got married on our 10-year anniversary, and it was like, oh, I can actually make that commitment to another human being because I did the work on myself.
Yeah.
I'm not going into fantasy about what a marriage looks like or what a relationship looks like. This person is flawed, but he is human, and so am I. And it's two people coming together and becoming partners instead of enmeshing with each other. And his energy and his mood doesn't dictate my day. I think that was one of the beautiful things I found out. Just because someone's in a bad mood or something, it doesn't affect who I am and how I'm feeling. Yeah. And it's not taking on our partner and them taking on us. And, it can be such an enmeshing, unhealthy way to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And it certainly doesn't make you feel good. About yourself or your relationship. I remember my sponsor. So I had a male sponsor, which, in 12 steps is a big no-no. It's just what
big no-no.
I don't recommend it for anyone else. It's just what worked for me. And he's my favorite person on this planet. But I remember him saying to me one time, I had been dating this guy and he ghosted me right after several months, and he just ghosted.
That's a blessing. If someone's ghosting you, that means it's God taking care of you. That's what
Amen.
I believe. Amen.
I totally believe that. It's God protecting me when I can't protect myself, right? Because I would have stayed with that person. I would have kept trying to make it work and blah, blah, blah. And it just wasn't right.
And I see that with friends too, when they ghost you. It's like, God's protecting me. I can't break up with this friend, so God's making it happen for me. Yeah.
Yes. So I was complaining about this guy because he ghosted me, right? And I'm calling him all these names and whatever. And I remember my sponsor, he's like, are you finished? And I was like,
He's
I don't
like,
know.
stop.
He goes, you could call him every name in the book. He goes, but the truth is, you picked him. And I was like, oh my God, I did. And that's when I really figured out that personal responsibility piece. Like, yes, I picked him. And when there were warning signs, I picked him again and decided to stay in it when I knew, right? And it just was this beautiful moment of really bringing that responsibility back to me. And he's like, Angela, it doesn't matter what he's doing. Like, you picked him. Like, this is it, right? He also said, and this was really profound, same person. And he said about him, he goes, my sponsor said, Angela, he is perfectly allowed to be wherever he is in his own journey.
Yeah.
He does not have to be where you want him to be.
And it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. He's just in his own thing. But that was good too, to not personalize it. I think I used to, for sure. And I think most people do. You personalize when somebody doesn't want to see you and they don't want a second or third date or whatever the thing is. For me now, as a healthier person, I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Like, I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Everybody is not going to be my cup of tea. And I would rather know that early than try to
go like a year trying to make it work.
Try to invest in something that just isn't going to work. So yeah, I kind of take that as a blessing too. But yeah, I just love that. Everybody is allowed to be wherever they are in their own journey. And we can't try to make them be where we want them to be.
Yeah. And my thing is, I always look at 99% of the time, it has nothing to do with you.
Absolutely.
Has nothing to do with how that person is behaving. Yes, you look at your side of the street and see, did I do something that created this situation, this drama? But usually it's 99. It doesn't have anything to do with you. And that's such a relief to me. But I thought it was so funny. Your sponsor, we always say, like, you painted those red flags white. You like paint them a different color because you don't want to see them.
Yes.
Oh my God. I was about to say that when you were talking. And I love my sponsor. My sponsor loves to be like, oh, poor you. Oh, you're such the victim. Like, he loves to like tease me like that. I have a gay male sponsor and he just loves to give me the hardest time. He's like, oh, so sad, Brianne. You did not get what you wanted. Oh. And it just makes me be like, okay, I'm not a victim. Like,
it's always the problem. If I could get everything I want when I want it, and if I could get all the people to do what I want them to do,
life would be amazing.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Last question, favorite question.
Ooh.
What's your favorite thing about being a person in recovery?
Being of service to other people.
Oh my gosh, you just melted my heart. Service is my favorite thing.
It was the worst thing. When I first got in, I thought, wait, I have to sponsor people. I have to care what other people's problems. I have to listen to them. I have to be there for them. I was like, ugh, gag me. I don't have time.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, that's the whole reason I'm getting on your podcast. That's the whole reason I started my own podcast, is to be of service to others. And when you get those emails, I just got one for Secret Life podcast that said, you told my story. Yeah. I went into a home for sex and love addiction. I was struggling. I got into another really bad relationship and I'm struggling right now. And the moment I listened, it helped me. And then she was like, I don't even know why I'm emailing you. This is so weird. And it was like, that is the whole reason I am doing this work, that I am vulnerable and opening myself to help others. It's not about me. And I say that to my guests. I said, this is not about me or you. This is about the people listening that don't have a voice. Mm-hmm. And that to me is that makes me go to bed at night and be grateful and wake up in the morning and say, who can I be of service to today other than my family? Who can I help heal? Yeah. And that's it.
Amen to that. Service really is life-changing.
It really is
completely life-changing to just think about other people and how you can help. And I am so crazy protective of my audience, and you'll go through the same thing. Like, as your podcast gets bigger and your numbers get bigger and bigger, everybody wants your audience, right? So I get hit up constantly. People want to do ads in my podcast. Yeah, because Well, because it's treatment centers, apparel companies, everybody with a
Right.
book.
I mean, as an actor, you get those too. They're like, can you promote my
Right.
product? And I'm like,
Yes. Yes. So
no.
everybody wants my audience, and I get so protective of my audience. I'm like, no, you don't need to put an ad. Like, they don't care what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I barely promote my own products to my audience. I'm certainly not going to be promoting other people's. But yeah, and it has to be things that I absolutely 150% believe in before I will ever put it in front of my audience. Period. It's so important to me to always protect them and make sure that we're always providing value. And it's the same thing even with podcast interviews. I probably get 15 to 20 messages a day, people wanting to come on my podcast. And I'm super weird about that too, because a lot of people, it's not about the message, and it's not about being of service. It's not about helping other people. It's about promoting their product, or sometimes people word it in such weird ways where it's like they just want to hear themselves.
That's the worst.
I get all the time, I get these like, I think I'd be a great guest. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, how does that, I'm sure we could have a great conversation. How does that help my audience? Like, how does it help the people that are listening? Because that's all I want.
Well, it makes me feel so great that you trusted me and let me come on and talk to you about this and share my experience, strength, and hope.
Yeah, for sure. Because
I just want to help other
you're
people.
Authentic.
Aw,
yes.
Thanks.
And it's a topic that so needs to be talked about. And I think this has been such a healthy conversation for me too, because there are a lot of pieces of this that I probably really need to dig deeper into also, just within myself, and really understand it better, because relationship issues, of course, are a huge struggle with addicted people. And relationships, actually, most people don't know this, but because addiction has always been my primary study, but relationships are the other thing that I study a lot. Like communication, interpersonal communication, and how to couple in a healthy way, and boundaries and codependence. That's the other thing that I have really studied.
So important.
Yeah.
Because once you get in a relationship, then you have to know how to navigate a relationship, how to talk to each other, how to be open and communicate about everything. I mean, my husband has 32 years in AA. He wouldn't mind me telling you that. And our conversations are very God-centered, as of, I feel this way. It's very important to know how to communicate in a partnership.
Yeah.
And they should teach this in school.
They should teach so many things they don't teach.
I know, that's true.
But yeah, it is important. And somebody just asked me the other day, they're like, well, how did you get into studying relationships? And I said, because it was my other greatest struggle. Alcohol and relationships were the other thing that I struggled with so much. And I just wanted to learn, mostly because I wanted to make sure that I was becoming a better person, but I also wanted to make sure that I was picking better, because the more bad choices you make in partners, the harder it gets to engage in the dating process and be a part of it and have a good attitude, right? Because you just end up causing yourself so much pain, and then you just get a bad taste in your mouth about it. And that's where I was some years ago. So yeah, that's the other thing that I love more than anything is learning how to couple healthily.
Healthily. I love that. And I also wanted to say one more thing for your audience. If they think they might have a problem in this area or want to look at having healthier relationships, the SLAW website, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, they have a 40 questionnaire you can go on. It's a yes or no. And they say if you get more than 5, maybe it's an area you look at. There's a website. So that really helped me at the beginning with my struggle, to go and look at these questions and say, do I do this in a relationship? Am I this person?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. And I will, for all the listeners, I will link that in the show notes too, so they can have access to that. And Brianne, just to end everything, tell everybody the name of your podcast again and the best way to find you. And when does your book come out?
Okay, so my book is coming out the end of December. It's called Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict. I made it aroma clef fiction because it's my stories, but they're amplified. And I'm really proud of it. It's a fun read, but it also there's lessons in it. And that was important to me.
Yeah.
And then you can find me at, Instagram at the Brianne Davis website, and then my podcast that I just launched August 3rd. It's called Secret Life Podcast. We talk about every secret under the sun, past or present, and where they are on the other sides and the lessons they learned. It's not just about sex, it's about every aspect. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm proud of, being a part of this podcast community and bringing hope to so many that are hopeless during this really crazy time. So please come and see my show if you're interested in hearing other people's secrets. If not, no worries. Thank you for listening to me.
And I'll link all of that stuff in the show notes too, so everybody can have access. I'm super excited for your podcast, and I'm going to go on your podcast too. So we'll dig into some dirty little secrets of some sort.
And if you guys want a fun show, I'm on the new season of Lucifer, and it starts on Friday, which is August 20th, I think. It's probably past.
Nice. I was wondering, I was like, what's going to happen with fall TV since quarantine? Like, could anybody film anything? Like,
I mean, they just started filming now, but very little things. So I don't know. I mean, reruns probably are going to happen. I have no idea. We don't even know. Hollywood doesn't even know right now. So, and I have a new movie coming out on Lifetime, September 19th. It's called The Surrogate, and it's really fun. Nice. Drama piece. So yeah, I'm around.
Good. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. It was such a pleasure to get to spend some time with you, and I look forward to coming on your show too.
Oh my God, it's gonna be so fun.
I know it's gonna be so fun. And that is Brianne Davis. For you guys out there, everything will be linked in the show notes. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will see you next week.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.